welcome to Drink It In, Behind the Pages, Season 14. And I am so honored to have Rabbi Aryeh Siegel with us. I just found out, I did not know his age. So he just told me, he goes, do you want me to tell you why I started writing a book at age 80? And I'm like, what? I'm thrilled to hear the wisdom from a man who's had many life experiences. And I think everybody else would also be very thrilled to hear the wisdom that you have to offer. So, but before you even get to that, why don't you just tell us quickly, if you can? I'm sure there's a lot to say about your life, but perhaps where you grew up, where you're located, and then get into what prompted you to write these books.
Okay, sounds good. Grew up in Chicago, East Rogers Park. My friends had more money than us. They lived in West Rogers Park, but we weren't religious. I went to an afternoon Hebrew school, hated it, like all of my friends, and basically ditched most of the time. And from the age of 12, I don't think I was back in a synagogue until I was married, like 35 years later. I don't even know how long it was, 30 years later. It's a long time, from the age of 12. And completely out of it in terms of Judaism. Interestingly, when I went to graduate school in Cleveland in community planning, I did my military time in the U.S. Public Health Service as a commissioned officer in New Orleans. But when I was 20 years old, I made a trip to San Francisco, and we hopped over to Berkeley, and this was like 1968 and 69, and Berkeley was happening. And for a kid from Chicago who had never been anywhere, this was like my dream place, and I decided that one way or the other, I'm going to get back there. So when I was finishing my public health service, I applied to another graduate program in public health at Berkeley, got in, moved there, and it wasn't such a simple deal because it was academically pretty demanding, didn't have a lot of money, had a new baby, a lot of stress. And my best friend in the program was a physician, also had a lot of stress. And he said, hey, I started this Transcendental Meditation, and it's really helping me. I think you might want to consider it. And I did. And I got a lot of relief from a lot of the stress that I was going through. And then I got more and more into it because there was an aspect of spirituality that I was exploring, because I never really had any idea that Judaism had a spiritual quality to it. I really had no knowledge of it, so I was attracted to it. I think like every Jew is seeking something spiritual. We just don't know where to look for it, and we look outside. So I got pretty heavily into it, became a teacher of Transcendental Meditation. Now, many people your age or younger, probably have no idea what Transcendental Meditation is or what it's about. So I'll give you like a 3-second overview.
Wonderful.
In the 1960s and 70s, it was sweeping the world. Pretty much every movie star was involved with it at that time. The Beatles spent 3 weeks at the ashram of the yogi of this meditation. And so there was a huge amount of interest. One year when I became a teacher, like over 300,000 people in America started in 1 year. So it was huge. And you can imagine that since Jews are about 1.5% to 2% of the population of the US, and something like 40 to 45% of every single non-Jewish movement, like meditation movements, yoga movements, you name it, Jews are like 30 times the proportion representation. So, and I met my wife. She was also a Transcendental Meditation teacher. And interestingly enough, she had a more traditional, not religious, but traditional Jewish upbringing in Montreal. And she wanted our kids to, by that time we had 4 kids, she wanted them to go to Hebrew school. And we weren't happy with the Hebrew school that they were in, so we got frustrated. But okay, so I'm really making a long story short here. what happened was I started working full-time for the Transcendental Meditation movement. And I was in charge of research for the movement and teaching Transcendental Meditation in rehabilitation settings. And one of the things that impressed me, the research that TM was using or promoting was really garbage. And I was a true believer, and I thought, I will just fix this up. So I'm going to figure out how to do it correctly. And I enrolled in a PhD program at UCLA in behavioral science research. And that was that then kind of went from there in a crazy way. I brought home a student newspaper. My wife is slipping through it. She sees an ad, learn more Hebrew in 8 weeks or 11 weeks, and learn 11 years of Hebrew school. Come to Chabad. She went. I said, how was the class? She said, the class was the class, but the teacher was very interesting. He was a rabbi. I think this one believes in God. I mean, I'm not really sure, but I'm thinking maybe this one believes in God. And she was like, I said, oh, okay, that's very interesting, because we didn't really know anybody who believed in God. That's a little bit of a general statement, but pretty much true. And he was very interested in her because he saw that she was, although not Jewishly connected, he saw she was a very spiritual person. And he said, okay, I'd like to meet your husband. So that started the chain of events. And this is like really around 1975, 76. And he connected with me. He said, why don't, we met. He said, why don't we learn some stuff together? What are you learning? And I said, well, I'm learning Hindu scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita. And he said, oh, that's interesting. I'm learning something also. It's called the Tanya. And I said, okay. And he said, why don't we like learn and do a compare and contrast and see what we can get out of it? I said, okay, great. So the Bhagavad Gita lasted about 12 minutes. We started like learning Tanya together, and he invested a lot in us. I mean, he really, he would come to our house probably 11 o'clock at night, twice a week for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, sometimes leave at 2 a.m. And it was really kind of extraordinary. And so he brought me to the Lubavitcher Rebbe the first time. And it was much different than in the early 70s. I mean, I didn't really know nothing about anything. I would feel like I was learning and very open to learning at that point. And so it was a Rosh Chodesh, and I had been able to daven in a small room with the Rebbe for the afternoon service. And he grabs and he said, let's go outside in front of 770. We'll try to greet the Rebbe as he's walking home. I did, and for 3 seconds or 1.5 seconds, the Rebbe looked at me and said, good month. It was the beginning of the new month. We're blessing it. And I got more and more connected, much, much more connected. And so essentially, there's a whole story about why we stopped meditating at a point where my wife and I were both meditating 4 hours a day, meditating 4 hours a day, doing yoga, reading Hindu scriptures. We were really kind of into it. And what was very interesting was we became firmer and more religious and more religious and more religious at the same time continuing our meditation practice until something happened to me that changed it. Mm-hmm. So, all right, so I'll tell you how I got out of TM, okay? It really had nothing to do with Chabad, really, at all. In fact, we were pretty close with that by that time with many Chabad rabbis. They all knew that we were doing TM, and they all knew we were very involved, not with the organization, but as in our personal program. Nobody ever said stop. My wife was at a family simcha in Canada. She's a Canadian, and there I saw a note on a window of a store saying, there's a makubal, like a mystic from Israel, from Jerusalem. And you can make an appointment and you bring your mezuzahs to him, and he'll tell you about your life, basically. So we had a lot of French doors. So I packed up 32 mezuzahs, put them in a shopping bag, and brought them to this house and waiting to see this guy. He doesn't speak a word of English. I don't speak a word of Hebrew. There's an interpreter between us, and nobody says a word. I walk in the room. There's this guy, I don't know, probably about 50 years old, with a beard, big glasses, I'm assuming magnifying glasses. He had a big light over his shoulder. He doesn't look at me. He just opens the bag, takes a mezuzah, like, just did this, like the 10th mezuzah or 11th. I see him. He's like looking and he's struggling. And what he says is Transcendental Meditation. He's like looking at the mezuzah, and he said, I didn't say a word to him.
Wow.
I was sitting on a bench. I fell off the bench.
Oh,
I was like, literally, I could not believe it. And then he said something to the interpreter, and the interpreter tells me, he's telling me that I must be very careful to tell you exactly what he's saying. Don't add anything from my side into it. Just tell him exactly what he's saying. So, it wasn't really a long story. It happened very quickly, but he said, tell him that it's not my role to tell him what to do, but he should know that is in a position to do a favor for his soul. His soul is confused. It doesn't know which way to go, to the East or with Judaism, and he should just make a decision. Where does he want to go? So I said, okay, I'll go with the Jews. And he said, great, whatever. And then he says to me, says through the guy, he says, he has a lot of idolatry stuff in his house, a lot of stuff that's not really good, Avodah Zorah stuff. And I had a library of Hindu books, gurus and scriptures and whatever, and photographs and whatever. And I also had a big Jewish library. At first, the Jewish library was tiny, but they kind of equalized it. But I had all this stuff. So I said, how do I get rid of it? I said, can't give it away. Just had to burn it. So it's like the hottest August day in Los Angeles in years. And I've got a fire going in my fireplace for 2.5 hours. My neighbor comes over and said, "What are you nuts? Are you crazy? What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm just burning books." And my wife was also at that point meditating and yoga several hours a day. So I told her what happened. I said, "Look, I stopped." She said, "Okay, I'll stop also." I said, "Really?" She said, "Yeah, I'm pretty tired. I keep falling asleep, so I'm just stopping." So that day was the last time we both stopped. Wow. So that's kind of like where we were, what was going on.
So could I ask a question? I know you spoke.
No question.
I know you spoke about transcendental.
This is a monologue. Didn't I tell you? Don't ever know. Okay.
Anything about transcendental meditation, and I don't know if you gave enough of information. This was more of a Hindu type practice, transcendental meditation. Like what is different between that meditation and other when people just say the concept of meditation today?
Okay, so basically, all the Eastern meditations have pretty much the same technique. It's thinking what we call a focus word. They call it a mantra. Okay, it's a sound. They say it's a sound without meaning and the idea is that you think the sound, your focus word, mentally without moving your tongue or lips. You just are thinking it, and because the mind is very active. And we're always filled with thoughts are going to come. But people have an idea that in meditating, you have to clear your mind of thoughts. That's not what really it's all about. What happens is that when you realize I'm having a thought and I'm not thinking my focus word, you just come back to your focus word. So you're thinking your focus word, there's a thought that comes in. I realize I'm thinking a thought, I'm not thinking my focus word. I just come back. That interplay, back and forth, allows the mind to settle down. And when the mind settles down, because it's not floating around up here, it has a way to come inward to a more subtle, more charming, more attractive level. When the mind settles down because of the mind-body connection, the body also gets a very, very profound state of rest. And I'll just give you give you an idea how profound this is. When people are sleeping, deepest part of deep sleep, oxygen consumption goes down about 8 to 10%. That's pretty standard. And that's after 6 hours of sleep, the deepest part of deep sleep. What happens with these meditations with experienced meditators is that after 4 to 5 minutes, instead of like 8 to 10%, it will go down 12 to almost 20% oxygen reduction. And there's a profound state of rest that goes on. And because of the world we live in that triggers like what we call the fight or flight response all the time. It started off flight or flight response was something that was extremely useful and beneficial because it prepared us to deal with challenges in life. In the jungle, a tiger comes along. What are you going to do? Are you going to run away? You're going to fight. This fight or flight response, it triggers a lot of stuff. Your heart goes faster, your breath rate goes faster, your adrenaline flows. All these things to prepare you to act in a split second. Well, that's all well and good, but when it's constant, as we see today with everything triggering it, like with traffic, fights, concerns with Israel, whatever we're dealing with, that constant triggering overloads the body. People get sick. That's really it's called we respond to the stress, and the body breaks down. So the antidote to that is a relaxation response, which is exactly the opposite in every way of the fight or flight response, and it's very healing. What's good for us is that this meditation that I was involved with, which was very good at doing that, you don't need that meditation. Like there was a Herbert Benson, who was a cardiologist at Harvard, a researcher. He studied this and he found that you could get the same physiological signature of transcendental meditation by using any word. You didn't need their mantras, their sounds. Mm-hmm. So he started off with the number 1, and then he found that if people used a word from their own tradition, like a Jew could use Shema or whatever, that the effect was even deeper. Mm-hmm. So you didn't need their mantras, and you certainly didn't need their initiation ceremonies, which are total avodah zarah, total idolatry. Mm-hmm. You didn't need any of that. All you needed was the technique. So that's what I learned, and I knew that I was very aware of this. This Benson wrote a book about it in 1975 that sold 4 million copies, called The Relaxation Response. It was a number 1 bestseller among physicians in preventative medicine for like 2 years. It was amazing. So I knew all that as background. So that's. So now at this point, stopped meditating. I was running a mental health center. I quit the TM movement, was running a mental health center, worked for the Jewish Federation for 9 years in the planning department, and got into real estate and spent the next 35 years doing commercial real estate. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my deal. I was very involved in the Chabad world, with synagogues and schools and raising kids and the whole story. So was the trajectory of my life until a very pivotal moment came up that really changed the course of my life at that point. I was 72.
So what was that pivotal moment at age 72?
I'm flipping through a biography of the Rebbe called Turning Judaism Outward by a Rabbi Chaim Miller. And it's a thick book, and I'm just flipping through it. And I see something about meditation. And I'm looking at it, and as I'm reading it, it says that the Lubavitcher Rebbe spent an inordinate amount of time imploring physicians and psychiatrists and neurologists to come up with a kosher meditation to deal with psychic stress. And that effort on his part went back to 1962 when he asked Dr. Rabbi Abraham Twersky, who was then a new psychiatrist. And the Rebbe sent Dr. Twersky a paper on Hindu meditation. And he crossed out what he didn't like, and he wrote in the margins what he wanted to replace it. And he asked Dr. Twersky to develop a kosher meditation. And he was busy, he put it aside, he never did it. But like then in 1972, 778, the Rebbe picked up on this again, I believe primarily because there were so many Jews getting, tens and thousands of Jews were getting involved in this meditation and other Eastern meditations and getting involved in cults. So basically, it was extraordinarily concerning for the Rebbe, extraordinarily. And he wrote to 50 physicians saying, like, please develop a kosher meditation to deal with stress. We need to like give these kids and young adults an alternative because they're stressed and they're getting involved in all this stuff. So when I saw that, I said, whoa, I had no idea about it because I did know that the main rabbis in the world at that time had put an absolute ban on all Eastern meditations because it was total idolatry. There's no question about it. To give you a quick example, the sounds that the TM, Transcendental Meditation, people tell you have no meaning, they're actually the names of Hindu deities. So you're repeating, so people are repeating the names of a Hindu deity. We know that it's more subtle levels of thought, it's more powerful. So for like however long it is, 20 minutes twice a day, 40 minutes a day, people are repeating the name of a Hindu deity. I got an advanced techniques. First one I got was the word Nama. In Sanskrit word Nama was added to my Hindu deity mantra. I later found out Nama means I bow down. So now, if you have people who are totally unaware of it, a certain amount of time a day, I bow down to this. It's really, really, really perverse. But that was what it was. It was in the past and no problem. And then what happened was TM, the Transcendental Meditation world, had been very, very quiet. And then all of a sudden, I started seeing it like this rebirth. Everybody was talking about it. Oprah Winfrey, who was very popular, was doing whole shows on Transcendental Meditation. This George Stephanopoulos from ABC or whatever, had big segments on it. Good Morning America, big segments. And what was really interesting was there was always a throwaway line. And of course, it's not religion. Of course, it has nothing to do with religion. And I knew that was a complete lie. But, it was what it was. But then I found out that the TM organization, through this surrogate called the David Lynch Foundation, he's a producer, he just died about a year ago, 8 months ago. He started a foundation to teach transcendental meditation to 1 million public school kids. And I thought, this should not be happening. I don't think the Rebbe would be pleased with this. And so I decided I was going to fight it. So I spent the next year and a half writing a book called Transcendental Deception. It was actually quite effective in fighting them in the public schools. We got them completely out. I'll just show if I can find a picture. I don't know if you can see this. That's me with the Maharishi, with the suit that I got married in 2 months later.
Wow. I'm just saying, because, it's also audio, the podcast. I just wanted to let people know that you showed a picture from your book. Wow.
Okay. So that was the deal. And we were pretty successful. We got them out of the public schools. Not only that, I became I got a Christian law firm to sue them. Wow. We had 3 lawsuits. Kids who were in it got about between $100,000 and $150,000 settlements. And then we just last month finished a class action lawsuit, and they ended up paying 710 kids $2.6 million as a violation of the establishment clause of the Constitution, with separation of church and state. So that was okay. So that was good. Okay, so now I'm very happy. I did my thing for God and country. I'm looking for a big Yasher Koyach from whoever, and I sent a note to Y.Y. Jacobson. Rabbi Jacobson?
Yeah, yes, I've met him several times.
Okay, so I sent it to him, and I'm thinking, okay. And he writes me back, and he said, Aryeh, I didn't know anything about this, about the Rebbe's involvement in this. I had literally no idea. And I was there all the time. I was a kid, but I didn't know anything. So I said, well, there's a memo, and there's a ton of correspondence, like a huge amount. He said, really? I said, yeah, I'll send it to you. So I sent him the correspondence. I sent him this memorandum that went out to 50 physicians. And he gets back to me like about 2 days later, and he says, look, Aryeh, you're Shekoyak for what you did. It's really very, very good. But I read that memo a couple of times, and there were two issues. One is that there was this problem with this meditation being about a Zora, and like you had to fight it because the kids were like getting involved with it. But the other issue was that Jews need a kosher meditation to deal with stress, and I really feel strongly that that's the more important part of the memo. So I said, "Oh no, really? Come on!" So that email from him then led to the second book, which
Number
is
two. What does it
which
say?
is called.
Calm?
So this is Kosher Calm, and it's a meditation and self-help tools for health and healing, inspired by the teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So so what I basically did was I took a look at all the various meditation techniques, and you have to understand also that the Rebbe was very clear that the technique of meditation was very beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
He was extraordinarily nuanced. Others condemned it completely. He said no, and he gave an example. He said the sun and the moon provide a lot of value, a lot of benefit for people. You can't survive without the sun and the moon, because there are some fools who worship the sun and the moon. Does that mean God should destroy it?
Right.
He said because some people attach things to the technique of meditation that are not proper. Does that mean that the technique itself is not valuable? Right. And so that was really the beginning of my exploration. I did a lot of research on various forms of meditation in India, and I found that they all follow the same pattern. It's just basically this thinking a thought, of thinking a sound, a word, and when you realize your mind has drifted off, come back to it, and that's the whole story. And do it for however time, length of time, and over time it becomes extremely, extremely beneficial. So that's what's going on.
Okay, I'm gonna once some years ago I read a book. I think it was called Jewish Meditation. It was by Aryeh Kaplan.
Yeah.
And
so the people who in the late 70s, who were one man in particular, a psychologist named Huda Landis, they were working with the Rebbe to set up like a meditation institute. And the Rebbe was offering seed money to start this. It was to be basically a competition to TM, which was so popular. They ultimately realized they'd be too expensive. It wasn't going to work. It wouldn't have what they needed it to have. But this Rabbi Landis, Dr. Landis, and a few other people started setting up some kosher meditation institutes where they would teach kosher meditation to people, however they defined that at the time. It wasn't like what I'm dealing with, but it was breathing techniques and focusing on whatever it was. They approached Aryeh Kaplan, Alav Shalom, to join with them because he was known and he was doing a lot of writing about meditation and Judaism. And he told them that I don't want to deal with meditation to deal with stress. I'm looking at it more in terms of spiritual connections, Kabbalah, and they told the Rebbe what was going on. The Rebbe was very clear. He said, this has nothing to do with anything Aryeh Kaplan is doing. It's not the purpose of this. Steer clear of it. So I'm very aware of what he was doing. It's just it's not this. Oh, okay. This is not Kabbalah. It's not Zohar. It's not his bonerness. It's not any of the foundational Jewish meditation practices to deepen your connection with God. This is simply a therapeutic tool to help people deal with stress in their life when stress is overwhelming to them to the point where they're not functioning well. where they're not able to deal with their family or their parnasa, whatever things are overloaded. And just to get this out so everybody's clear, this meditation that I'm talking about is not for everybody. If people are functioning well in their life, forget it. You don't need it. It's only for people who are feeling overwhelmed with what's going on in their life and they can't deal with it adequately. And it's not a lifetime thing. It's basically you do it until the symptoms resolve and then you stop. And it's like if they resume, start it again. But it's more like a prescription medication than a life sentence. So that the Rebbe was very clear with guidelines, very clear.
Wow.
So it's very, very fascinating stuff.
That was very good. I like how you described that and explained it. Very distinct. Thank you. That should be quite clear for those who are listening. So on a separate note, so you said you had 4 kids. Are they still?
Well, we have 6 actually.
Oh, you had 6. I thought at one point you said, okay, you had 6. So where are they located? Are they near you? Or are they all over?
Yeah, we have 2 near us. One in New Jersey, one in Milan. She's a shliach of the Rebbe for the last 30 years. One in Miami Beach and one in Australia.
Wow.
I think I got them all.
Wow, all over. Wow. Wow.
And we have grandchildren and great-grandchildren all over the world, thank God.
That's so beautiful. Thank God. So beautiful. Very, very beautiful. Okay. So just curious, what was the most amazing feedback that you ever got from your books that you were like wowed by? Like you're like, oh my gosh, didn't realize my books did that.
Okay, so 2 things actually happened. One is I got a call from a substitute teacher in Chicago who was a born-again Christian, and they had like in the Chicago schools 3,000 kids doing this meditation, this Transcendental Meditation, and she knew it was off, and she said, I found your book. I don't even know how, but it really helped me a lot. And can you help us? So I said, yeah, what do you want me to do? So I started like working with her to do like this guerrilla movement in the Chicago schools. So I sent her a dozen books, which she gave to the parents who were most involved. So the book really gave her all the material that she needed. I also sent her a lot of additional information so she would have ammunition. She ends up going to a meeting of the Chicago Board of Education, and she takes with her a 14-year-old inner city kid who has been in this Transcendental Meditation program in one of the Chicago high schools. And anybody can get on the agenda to speak to the Board of Education. You get 2 minutes. There were 2 of them, so they got 4 minutes. So this substitute teacher talks and does an overview of this program and why it doesn't belong in the schools. It's whatever it is. Then this kid gets up there, and she's like not very well not a polished speaker at all. There's about 50 people behind her in the audience. In front of her is the entire Chicago Board of Education, about 14 or 15 people. There's a number of teachers. There's the head of schools. There's the legal counsel. There's about 20 people in front of her. And she gets up and she says, I want to tell you what happened to me when this program came into my school. A man that I didn't know came into my classroom and took me out to a room down the hall, another classroom. But the windows were covered over. They were papered over. And the room was dark. And there was incense going in the room. It was filled like kind of smoke. And there was like a table. She was describing like an altar. And there was a picture of a man on the back of the table. And there were all these little cups in front of him. And this man started singing a song in a language I didn't know or understand. And he started throwing things in front of this table. And he kept bowing to it and singing this song in a language I didn't understand. And she describes this whole thing. And she said, I didn't know anything about what was going on except for one thing. that what he was doing was not the religion that I practice in my home. And like the head of schools, she's the head of all the Chicago Board of Education. She turns to the entire Board of Education. She said, when I let this program in, I vetted it. And I had no idea of anything this young lady is talking about. Do I have your permission to check into this and see what's going on? Yeah. 2 months later, the Chicago Board of Education went to this David Lynch organization that was pushing the program and said, we like the program, you can continue it, but you can't do this ceremony. And they said, no, we can't do the program without the ceremony. That's an inviolable part of what we do. And they threw the program out of the school. So that they walked away from like 3,000 kids in a program that's going on for several years. And so great, I think that's terrific, end of story. But it wasn't the end of story. A Christian law firm contacted this teacher, and she turned them on to me. And we ended up, I was an expert witness in a federal case against them that I just told you settled for $2.6 million. Wow. And they're knocked out forever in the schools. Then they tried to get in the Veterans Administration and knocked them out of there also. Wow. All you have to do is tell people what it really is, and that's enough to get them knocked out. It's not so hard. So anyway, that's one of the things that happened as a result of the book.
How about the kosher calm? Have you gotten feedback that somebody wrote to you like this has been very helpful, or?
Basically, it's a brand new book. It just came out like 4 weeks ago, and people are just
4 weeks ago. So sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's just hit 4 weeks ago. It just started to take off. But I have practiced teaching this meditation to a number of people to try to test it out. Mm-hmm. And it's been very, very, very helpful. In fact, I make no claims that any result from one person will transfer to anybody else. But there were a couple people with ulcerative colitis who were doing better, a couple people with headaches that were doing better. But instead of just in terms of what I'm describing, let me just give you one statistic so you understand what the impact of this possibly. There was a study of the relaxation response, which is basically what I teach, is a variant of that, done at Harvard Medical School in their student, like they're in their HMO, in their health maintenance organization. So every student at Harvard, every faculty member, every staff person, everybody that works at Harvard or Mass General Hospital or any of the affiliated hospitals are all in the same health plan. And what they did was they taught this relaxation response to 4,000 of their members. And then they followed them for 1 year, and they compared their medical care utilization against 13,000 other people who did not learn the relaxation response. Now, the people who learned it were chosen randomly. It wasn't like they were volunteered to learn it. They were just people that was offered to, and they did it. And they followed those 4,000 against the 13,000. They found that like within that 1 year period, the people who had the relaxation response training had an overall reduction of medical care utilization of like 43%. It's like an enormous number of fewer visits to the clinic, to the doctor, to the emergency room, for different tests, CT scans, everything across the board was massively reduced for the people who have the relaxation response. So basically, as the body gets rid of stress, it gets stronger, gets healthier, gets more resilient. And things that would normally overload it, it takes more to overload it because the body is stronger and has better defenses. So yeah, I'm very, very encouraged. I think that and now what's happening is I've been working with the head of resilience for Zaka, and we are talking about training Zaka volunteers in this meditation. Because what's good about it is that it's a very powerful meditation, but it's totally within the boundaries of Jewish law. There's nothing to it that could be problematic. There's no foreign mantras. There's no initiation ceremonies. There's people choose their own word, or a word like Shema or whatever for their own sound. It's self-regulated. Nobody's pushing anybody to do it. It's like, so there's really nothing halakhically wrong with it, and it works. So I think it's exactly what the Lubavitcher Rebbe was looking for, and hopefully it'll be very helpful to people.
Amazing, Rabbi Siegel. So you fulfilled the Lubavitcher Rebbe's, what his memo to you, 2 parts now.
I think so. I think so. We're on the path.
Yeah.
The other thing people might find useful is that, as hard as I tried, it's not so easy to teach people how to meditate out of a book. I mean, it's just I think we did a really, really good job. I had it reviewed by a lot of longtime meditators. We really were careful about the language descriptions, the whole story. However, even that, I knew that there were some people that would do better with an audio visual kind of deal. So I started working with an animator, Mohammed in Pakistan, and we put together a 15-minute audio, a visual, kind of a cartoonish how to do kosher meditation.
Oh.
So I have a website called koshercom.org, and if you scroll down, you'll see an animation, and there's a English version and a Hebrew version, and you can watch that, and you can learn how to meditate, and then the book can give you all the other information in terms of how to set up your environment, how to make it into a habit instead of like something that you enjoy doing, how to deal with frequently asked questions. Like, am I doing it right? It's so easy. The main question is, how do I know I'm doing it right? Like that, and like you're doing it right by the results. So within a week or 2 or 3, you're going to start feeling better, stronger, clearer, better, more rested, sleep better. But people who do it, they benefit.
Wow.
So the animation is also helpful, and it's on the website.
Oh, this has been very educational. I want to thank you for joining me on my podcast, and I'm definitely going to look out for koshercom.org, and I want to look for that animation. That's very different and unique. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. And you can get the book at Amazon, and within a little while, it'll be in all the Jewish bookstores. So
Oh, wow.
it should be around.
Exciting.
Okay, thank you so much, Jordana. It was really a pleasure to meet
My
with you.
pleasure. Thank you. Have a great, great day.
You too. Take care. Bye.